For the longest time, the whole story of databases was pretty simple. Just go faster, handle way more data, and scale bigger. That was the game. But sometime in the last decade, something really fundamental shifted. The entire conversation changed from being all about performance to something else, something way more critical: protection. So yeah, let's dive into how that happened. And really, it all boils down to this one single question. Because at some point, our databases stopped being just these technical things that engineers fiddled with. They started becoming records of legal compliance, things that were actually bound by international law. So, how on earth did we get here? Well, it all started with this massive pressure from the outside world, something that really had nothing to do with the technology itself. You had all these high-profile data breaches, right? And public trust was just cratering. So in response, this whole new age of data privacy and regulation showed up, and it completely reshaped the digital world. It forced databases to either adapt or, frankly, become totally irrelevant. What's so wild when you look at this is just how fast everything changed. Around the mid-2010s, you start hearing whispers about data trust. Then, boom, 2016, Europe adopts GDPR. That was a landmark. But by 2018, it wasn't just some document, it was the law, with real teeth and serious enforcement. And that just set off this global chain reaction, with rules like California's CCPA following right behind, creating a whole new standard for data rights pretty much everywhere. So, with the full force of the law behind all these new rules, it demanded a huge change in the very philosophy of how we build and manage databases. The era of focusing only on raw speed was just over. The age of required security had officially begun. And this slide, it just captures that shift perfectly, doesn't it? We went from a world where the best database was simply the fastest one to a world where the best database is the most trustworthy one. It wasn't about adding a few features here and there. It was a completely new mindset. Suddenly, a database had to provide proof of security, proof of compliance, and proof that it was handling people's data responsibly. And this is the absolute key takeaway here. Security got a massive promotion. It went from being this optional extra, something you might bolt on later if you had time, to being a fundamental part of the architecture. It became just as essential as the database's ability to store data in the first place. So, how did a database like MySQL actually step up to this challenge? It wasn't just a change in mindset. It meant they had to build a whole new set of tools designed specifically for this new world of security and compliance. Let's take a look inside that toolkit. To meet these new demands, databases like MySQL had to create an entirely new set of defensive tools. Think of things like transparent data encryption and role-based access control, which we're going to look at in a second. And these weren't just abstract ideas. They were real, concrete lifelines for companies, giving them the actual tools they needed to prove they were following the law. Okay, let's start with transparent data encryption, or TDE. This was a total game changer. It automatically encrypts your data when it's just sitting there on a disk, what we call data at rest. So what that means is if someone physically stole a hard drive, the data on it would be complete gibberish. It's totally unreadable without the right keys. It's this powerful foundational layer of security. Then you've got role-based access control. This whole idea is about enforcing what's called the principle of least privilege. In plain English, it just means people should only be able to see and touch the data they absolutely need to do their jobs, nothing more. This move alone drastically cuts down on the risk of data breaches, both accidental and malicious ones from the inside. So all of these tools, they're all pointing to a new reality. The new gold standard for a good database isn't just about how fast it runs anymore. It's about how accountable it is. It's about being able to build and maintain trust, both with your users and with the regulators. This table really shows you the new balance sheet for a modern database. The traditional assets, things like queries, indexes, scalability, they're still important for sure. But now, they are equally matched by these modern necessities, like encryption keys and audit trails. These things aren't just technical logs anymore. They have become the actual currency of trust. And it all comes back to this one critical truth that really came out of this whole compliance era. Databases are no longer just technical things built by engineers in a back room. They are legal instruments, and they are subject to the same level of scrutiny as any other official record. So let's just quickly recap the big takeaways here. First, strong security isn't just a good idea anymore, it's an absolute requirement for legal compliance. Second, those boring audit logs, they've transformed the database from a simple filing cabinet into a real tool for governance. Third, encryption is completely non-negotiable now. And finally, the very definition of a trustworthy database has permanently changed to include its legal accountability.
This evolution, from performance to protection, it really marks one of the biggest shifts in the entire history of data. And it leaves us with a pretty vital question to think about as we move forward. What is the next great challenge that's going to redefine what data trust even means?